So, the Mechaber says in Sif Gimel that Basar Bechalav, it's not Basar Bechalav min HaTorah. Certainly things that are not even Basar Bechalav Bechalal, like Basar Tmeya Bechalav Torah, the Shach and Taz both agree is not Basar Bechalav, even Midrabanan. So it says, Mutter Bebishul Ubahanor. And Basar Chaya V'oif is also Mutter Bebishul Ubahanor. For some reason, the Ramah decided to bring Maras Ayin here in Sif Gimel. I don't know why. There's a Sif in the Mechaber that discusses Maras Ayin, right? But he decided to bring in Sif Gimel about that they make cholov from shkedim, and as the Marshal brings that on Purim, that was part of their Simchas Purim, Benapeichu, they would mix chicken or basar into milk, but it was fake milk, it was shkedim. Rabbi Pekarski, Olav Hashalom from 770 used to say, Vi shtayt pirim in Basar Bechalav. What does it say, Purim in Basar Bechalav? So this is what it is. Purim b'kayoytze b'shiregidim lechol tanagelis b'chalav shkedim. He says you need to put shkedim. You need to send a box of shkedim. There was once a bocher, he sent me shalach monas, and he made a whole tray with different scenarios of Shulchan Aruch. He had a little rubber ducky in milk, in Cholav Shkedim, and he gave me a knife with a pickle, and I don't know, many other interesting things to make every weird scenario from Shulchan Aruch. But anyways, so basically they make Cholav Shkedim, and you want to know if you could eat basar with Cholav Shkedim. Are we choishish from Marasayin or not? So the Marshal says, yeah, we are choishish from Marasayin, even if you're going to put chicken in the Cholav Shkedim, and you have to send a little box of almonds together with the milk to show you that it's actually almond milk. That's what he says. The Ramah argues, and the Ramah says, a Marasayin of a derabonon is okay. A Marasayin of a deraisa is not okay. So you can't eat Basar Behema, you cannot eat with Cholav Shkedim without a Siman. But Basar Oif with Cholav Shkedim you could. So that's what he says. Manichim ba basar oif hoil ve'ein rak mit rabban, aber basar behema yesh lo aniach etzel hacholov. There's supposed to be a comma there. Shkedim. You put shkedim next to the cholov mishum marasayin. Again, I don't know why did Amma put it over here. L'chedi should have put it in the next sif that Mechaber says. A Maisa with marasayin. But for whatever reason, the Ramah decided to do it over here. Okay. So the Ramah argues with the Marshal and he says there's no marasayin by a derabonon. Again, the Achronim call this oif with cholav shkedim as a trei derabonon. Okay, let's not get confused. It doesn't necessarily have to be called a trei derabonon. What he means is both sides are not real. The basar is fake; it's only basar oif, and the cholav is fake. The cholav is not real cholav; it's cholav shkedim. So there's no issue with marasayin. Indeed, the Shach says if that's the Ramah's shitta, he says that even by the only time there's marasayin is if it's marasayin of a deraisa. So even behema, if it's not cooked together, it's also only a derabonon. Correct? Therefore, the Shach says, even according to the Ramah, the only time you need to put shkedim is if the basar was cooked with cholav shkedim. But if you dip a piece of basar into cholav shkedim cold, and you want to eat it, you don't need to have shkedim. So says the Shach. Pshat in the Ramah. He says, the fees tzorech loymar, the mayri bebishul. Mayri bebishul means that it's already cooked, and now it's a marasayin of a deraisa, you have to put shkedim. And then he says, v'chein kosav b'teiris chatos lehedya. He says the Teres Chatos says so beferish. Now, agav, that's not what it says in the Teres Chatos. The Teres Chatos is actually quoted in the Taz. I'll read you all the Teres Chatos and you tell me if that's what the Teres Chatos says. Let's see the Teres Chatos in the Taz. And Taz Dalet. B'darkei Moshe v'Teres Chatos kosav. You see, right in the beginning of Dalet, Taz Dalet. Sherashal, lomad midam dogim, Lesoid lechel basar oif becholav shel shkedim elo imkein hinichu mishkedim etzlo mishum marasayin. Just like dam dogim, you're drinking blood. You're not eating the fish. You squeezed out the blood from the fish, and you want to eat the dam. It's mutter. Dam dogim is mutter. The Mashal says if you want to eat dam dogim as a whatever, if you think it tastes good, I don't know, whatever, you have to put kaskasim there. You have to put scales in there. You got to put a goldfish in there. I don't know. The same thing says the Mashal. If you want to have cholav shkedim, even with chicken, you have to put shkedim. The docha dvorov, the Teres Chatos slug them up. She'ein rayo midam shemotzinu boy yisur kores. The marasayin of dam is a marasayin of what? Of the regular dam, which is sometimes a yisur kores. I don't know why he has to say kores, and if it's not kores, and if it's only a lav, that's okay, whatever. But sometimes dam is a kores. Mashe'ein kim bebosar oif becholov. Shu derabanan. So the Ramah says, I disagree, you don't have to put shkedim. This is the quote that the Shach refers to, and that he says, when do you need to put shkedim? Only if it's bishul, correct? That's the quote the Shach is referring to when he says v'chein kosav b'teiris chatas behedya, that the teiris chatas is befedish. But that's not pshat in the teiris chatas. He says if you're eating oif with cholov, there's no reason to put shkedim because oif is only a derabanan, and even if it was otu behema also has to be cooked. He's not talking about behema; he's talking about oif. He's saying oif is so far removed from a deraisa because the oif is not being cooked. So even if you'll think it's a behema, it also has to be cooked. The Rashba's not talking about when you put shkedim by a behema. So the Shach sort of misunderstood the Teres Chatas. The Pri Megadim says it befedish. Look at Sif Sedas Vov, second line, Umihu. Pri Megadim Sif Sedas Vov, Umihu. Mashakosav mit Teres Chatas mashma. Okay, quick. Zeh Loshna Teres Chatas. Where are we going? Hine. Here, second column, I'm sorry. Second column, fourth line, towards the end. Umasha Kosav. Second column. For those who have this Shulchan Aruch, second column, Umasha Kosav in the Siv Sidas. Va'afilo bebheima ein isur ki in derech bishul. Says the Pri Megadim, l'choira a-oif koi. He's going on oif. Va'afilo, v'hochi kamar. Afilo beheima ein isur b'tzaynim. V'im kein, be'oif di'ika kamatz dodim loy gozra ayidei tzaynim. Akitze, the Pri Megadim says befedish that the Shach sort of misunderstood the Teres Chatas, but that's irrelevant. The Shach is still a guy. He decided that according to the Ramah, only if you cook the Basar Behema do you have to put shkedim. Fine. Then he says, I happen to agree to the Mashal. I hold there is Marasayin even by a Derabanan. So according to the Taz, according to the Shach, Lepoyel, you need to put shkedim even by oif, even by Behema that it's not cooked as well. And even by oif that's not cooked. That's already going to get iffy in the achronim. But let's assume the Shach makes a marasayin, even if it's a 3 triple derabanan. Oif with cholov shkedim, it's not cooked. Otu basar behema, which is not cooked. Otu basar behema, that's going to be cooked. There's always going to be marasayin, you have to put shkedim. Fine, that's the Shach's shkita. So he argues befedish with the Ramah. Okay. The Taz, however, agrees to the Ramah. Look what he writes. V'af ki divrei Ramah nechoinim. Though, although the Ramah is correct, he says, and the minig is to put chicken in cholov shkedim without having shkedim next to it. He says, by the way, what does the Nekudas HaKesef say right on the spot when he says divrei Ramah nechoinim? What does the Shach say in Nekudas HaKesef? Ze einoi, Baba Maisis, the Ramah's wrong. But the Taz agrees, ikroin is dik. Sorry. Yeah, Vav, obviously. Hey, if it's Vav, if it's not Ches, Kemuvan, it's a toes, the Muchach. Yeah. So B'meila obviously is Einoi, and he holds that the Ramah is correct, however, says the Taz. But nevertheless, anything you could do to make a tikkun, there should be no problems, you should put shkedim. So the Taz says, put shkedim. And then he says the following, he says, Visu, I'll prove it to you, you have to put shkedim, the legora mecholav isha. It's not worse than cholav isha, and cholav isha you have to put shkedim. So here you also have to put shkedim. Okay. Beseder. Stop for a second. Now we're going to go to Cholav Isha, and then we're going to go back and try to put it together. It says the Mechaber in Siv Dalet, also levashel b'Cholav Isha. The Mechaber says you can't even cook basar, any basar, the Shach is medayik in ches, even oif, with Cholav Isha. Mishum, mar mipnei, marasayin. Right away, the Mechaber now introduces marasayin. V'im nofal atech atavshel, bottle ve'ein sorech shir. But, it's bottle ve'ein sorech shir. There's a yesoid godel the Mechaber is making here that you need to know. Every Isur D'Rabbanan needs how much to be Mevatalit? Shishim, just like a Deraisa. Maras Ayin doesn't need anything. Just make sure you don't see it. So bottle ve'ein sorech shir means make sure you have roiv. So if a drop of Cholav Isha fell into your chicken soup and it doesn't look white, doesn't look like Cholav Isha, doesn't look like Cholav at all, it's mutter. If there's no color, it's mutter. So bottle means bottle b'roiv ve'ein sorech shir. Okay? That's simple pshat. You don't need shishim, just make sure you don't see it. For example, what's another thing that's only also Mishum Arasai, which many people don't know? Dam Odom. We learned the last week, Morek Subis. Dam Odom is only V'chilufa B'dam. Dam Odom, it says like this, you're not allowed to be Yoinik Cholov from a Isha if you're older than 2 years old, or if you stop, the mother stopped nursing, correct? But it's also, you're not allowed, right? But you're allowed to drink it, Stam Azoi. It says V'chilufa B'dam, you're allowed to suck your dam that's in your mouth. Yeah, but the dam that went out is like also mishum marasayin. But bottle the ain't sorech shir. So it means if a dam odom fell into a tafshil and it's you don't see it, it's bottle the ain't sorech shir. Someone once called me. He was washing the dishes with very hot water and he cut himself with a knife. Does the knife now become treif? What's the answer? No. Wash off the knife and there's no dam there because it's only also mishum marasayin. If you washed it off, that's called bottle the ain't sorech shir. You know, it's no problem. Okay, so the Mechaber says that also the Bashal Bechalav Isha Mishum Marasayin. Right away an explosion happens over here. Usually, by the way, rarely does the Ramah comment on the Mechaber. He argues with the Mechaber, doesn't comment on the Mechaber. He says, V'yashayimrim, this is the shit, V'yashayimrim, I argue. Here he comments on the Mechaber. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. You just contradicted yourself from Gimel to Dalet, right? In Gimel, you brought me a whole bunch of Basar Bechalavs that there's no Marasayin. You could cook it, some of them, right? Mutter, Bebishul, or Bahano, there's no Marasayin, yeah? And suddenly here, you bring Marasayin. What are you talking about? And the Teres Chatos asks the Kasha really not on the Mechaber. It's on the Rashba. The Rashba wrote Gimel, and the Rashba wrote Dalet. Something is fishy here, right? What's going on? So the Shach first tries to say Gimel is not talking about Marasayin. He starts Marasayin and Dalet. I kvetched. And he brings another option, to Stakano Marasayin by Chol of Tomei, because it looks different. And here's where I'll tell you the story. Someone told my father, he's already a Sheikh in Ofar, he's not alive anymore, that he was not really makpid on Chol of Yisrael. Until he was once traveling in business to China, and they served him coffee with milk, and he asked them, why is the milk a little green? He said, because it's not cow's milk. It's the Chatchila horse milk, or whatever, pig's milk, I don't know. So he obviously started to be makpid on Chol Yisrael. He didn't know that the whole heter of Chol of Stam doesn't even apply in China. It only applies in the United States. When they tell you they're selling you farm milk from a behemoth, from a kosher behemoth, so you can rely on, the Mishnah relies on the USDA or whatever. But in those places, you can't rely on it. But either way, so it's one of the terutzim. But the ikar teretz of the Shach was mechadish, achidish, godel b'yosef. And let me give you a hakdama. What's the problem of Marasayin? What's the problem? So actually, the Mefarshim bring two problems. Number one, I might think you're doing an Aveda. That's bad. You're not allowed to do something that makes somebody think you're doing an Aveda. Second option is, I might think it's mutter. If I see you doing it, and you look like an Erlich guy, right? You look like a Choshev so it's probably mutter. So says the Shach, if I see a Yid with a long payas and a long beard, and he's eating a cheeseburger, what am I going to think? One of two things. I don't know about fake cheese. There was no fake cheese in those days, let's say. What does it look? Or he's really, he's a bluffer. He's not from, right? It's Marasayin. Or I'll think that you could eat a cheeseburger from this restaurant. That's Marasayin, correct? A guy, Geschmacke Yid, it's a dripping the schmaltz of the cheeseburger, right? Aside from the cheese and aside from the basar. What am I going to say? He's sick? He's a choylem mesukin? I mean, you could think he's pikuach nefesh, yeah? You see, it's not pikuach nefesh. He's sitting down, he's geschfressing a whole cheeseburger. That was pikuach nefesh. But if I see the same guy cooking Basar Bechalav, real, I think it's real Basar Bechalav. What am I going to think? Erlich guy, it's tzaddik, he's cooking Basar Bechalav. What am I going to think he's doing? For the refuah. Now, you allowed to cook the refuah? Basar Bechalav? So, could be it's Sakanas Nefashis, or I assume he put in a Michael that made it taste bad, ruined it. I don't know. I'll be matchstick what he's doing, because he's not eating it. If he's eating, there's no teretz. But if you're cooking, you have to come up with terutzim. Why are you allowed to cook? The Mela Zok the Shach, there's no Marasayin bebishul. Period. Sif Gimel was not talking about Achila, because none of the things in Sif Gimel are you allowed to eat. Basar Tmeya Bechalav, you for sure can't eat. Right? Basar Oif Bechalav, you also can't eat Midrabanan. Basar Chaya Bechalav, you also can't eat Midrabanan. The whole issue of Marasayin would have been in Sif Gimel, only Lagabe what? Bishul. Bishul, there's no Marasayin. The Mechaber says in Dalad, also Levashal Bechalav Isha. It's read also lechel b'chol isha. That's what it really means. The word levashal means lechel because it's interchangeable. Because who did that? Who's the first person that made levashal mean lechel? Hashem, right? In the Torah, he wrote lois levashal gedi b'chalev. And according to the Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch, lois levashal one of the times means lois se'achoil. Correct? So b'meila it became interchangeable. But in reality, there's no maresai in bibishul. Okay, that's the real answer. That's the Shach's answer. The Ramah commented here on the Mechaber and said, this is a stira. Doesn't make any sense. Look at the Ramah. V'nira lefiza, if there's Marasayin, the kol sheken, the also the vashal lechatchila, b'chol of tmeya, a basar tmeya, b'chol of teira. I don't know what you're talking about, Rabbi Mechaber. You missed the boat, says the Ramah. In Siv Gimel, should have been Marasayin too. So I argue on Siv Gimel also. That's what the Ramah says. He's not just arguing on the Mechaber because of the Yashayimrim. He's commenting on the Mechaber. He says, you made a stira. The Shach answered the stira. Okay? So far, so good. So the Shach was Mechadish, that there's no Marasayin bebishul. Siv Dada is talking about Achila. Make sense? Now, Agav, the Shach says that even the Ramah obviously also learned Levashal means Lechel. Because I told you back in the previous page that when is there Marasayin according to the Ramah by Cholav Shkedim? Only if the Behemah was cooked with the Cholav, right? Because if it's not cooked, you don't have to put Shkedim. It's not a Deraisa. It's not a Marasayin of a Deraisa. It's only a Marasayin of a Deraisa if you cook them together. Well, how'd you cook them? You put shkedim in the kitchen, Says the Shach, doesn't make any sense. But doichik loymar, that you put shkedim in the kitchen. So how'd you cook them? Must be, there's no Marasayim bebishul. So therefore the Ramah says, the Shach says on the Ramah, you should have also known that lechel means levashel. He doesn't mean, people learned the Shach wrongly, that the pshat is that the Ramah's levashel and the Ramah also means lechel. But it becomes impossible. Take a look what it says. Let's read the Ramah with saying lechel. Ulefizeh, kol shekin the osur lechel lechatchila b'chol of tmeya mishum marasayin. You can't eat b'chol of tummy because of marasayin. It's also in a Torah. You can't eat b'chol of tummy. So obviously levashel and the Ramah meant levashel. What the Shach meant was the Ramah, you should have gotten it. You should have figured it out. You should have realized that the mechaber's levashel means lechel because you should have known that. How did you cook it in your in the kitchen? How'd you cook it? There's no.
What did the Ramah mean when he said cooking it? What was his kavanah?
When there in
Dalit? What was the Ramah thinking when he writes here?
Dalit?
Hagal.
He means levashel. He means levashel. For sure. For sure.
So he forgot it. He has like a...
No. The Shach is a kasha on the Ramah. You should have known that the mechaber's levashel means lechel. Because you yourself learned in Siv Gimel that you taina, the only time you need to put shkedim is if it's already cooked. How'd you cook them?
So
obviously there's no Marasayim bebishul. That's the Shach's taina. What's your problem?
The whole deal is of what he was thinking. That's not even a shayla. That's just like Yishlaim what he was thinking. Because it's not a shayla on how he learned it. It's a shayla on what he's thinking when he writes Hagov Siv Gimel. The whole shayla is what were you thinking when you say
So Tzvi is saying like this. The whole Shach's shayla is based on the way the Shach learned Pshat and the Ramah. But made lefrak tera shayla. That's what you're saying. Yeah, duh. Obviously, what's the point? We get that. That's exactly what the Shach just did, based on how I explained the Ramah. It doesn't make any sense. Beseder, you want to answer for the Ramah that he disagrees with the Shach? Beseder. I'm just telling you what it says. Okay, so the Shach's taina is that the Ramah should have also chapped that levashel means lechel. Mamela, there's no Marasayim bebishul. So it comes out from the Shach's shita something very interesting. He's actually very machmid in Marasayim. He holds it even by the Rabbanon. He holds like the Marshal, but only by Achila, not by Bishul. Whatever there's going to be Marasayim, it's never by Bishul. It's only by Achila. Correct? So on the one hand, he's stark machmir, and the other hand is mekel. He's machmir at this Marasayim, even by the Rabbanon, Basar Bechalav shkedim, Basar Bechalav yisha. But only when you're eating, not when you're cooking. You could cook 100%. There's no Marasayim. Okay. The Taz brings the same stira, the Ramos Kasha, and he comes with a different teretz. He says that there's only Marasayim if it's similar to Basar Bechalav. What's the getter of Basar Bechalav that we learned in the previous Shiurim? Shneim heter, right? So the only time there's Marasayim if it's Shneim heter. I always get attacked by Bachram. It doesn't make any sense. If it's Marasayim, what do I know? Maybe it is Shneim heter. I'm looking, I don't know what I'm seeing, correct? I don't know what I'm seeing. You're telling me what I should think? I think it's a problem. I don't know that it's not Shneim heter. Like, what does that even mean? What's the Taz talking about? The answer is as follows. Bechlal, why is there ever a sif in Shulchan Aruch about Marasayim? Shulchan Aruch in Yoreh should have began, or in Yoreh Chaim, in Ilchos Shabbos, or any halachas. Osir lases kol davar sheyesh boy mishum Marasayim, and that's it. Why do we have halachas for Marasayim? What does that even mean? Don't do anything that makes you think you're doing an aveda. The short answer is, that's called a shikol hadas Marasayim. It's up to you. Can you use the bathroom in a treifa restaurant? Question. I don't know. Depends where the treifa restaurant is. Depends if it's a restaurant that people think if you're going to walk in that it's kosher. No, but if it's in a mall, right, where it's open restaurants and people maybe going to get a drink also, yes. Can you buy a coffee in Starbucks? If you think Starbucks coffees are kosher, they sell treif also. I'm not saying you can buy coffee in Starbucks. But if you think you could, why are you allowed to walk in there? They also sell treif because it's a coffee shop. So that's a shikol hadas Marasayim. Okay, for example, you're going on with and the guy's a treif restaurant, he's Jewish. Do you put a mezuzah on the door because he's mechlei b'mezuzah? What's the short answer? No, obviously not. But he's not doing mezuzah. Yeah, so what? You're going to have Yidden going into the machshel Yidden to eat treif chas v'sholem. Of course, you can't put the mezuzah up there in a treif restaurant. But then Torah has also Marasayim. Halacha also has Marasayim, and there are gedorim. The halachic Marasayim has certain gedorim when it's taki also. So even if it doesn't fit what the Taz says in Marasayim, you think someone's going to think you're doing an aveda, don't do it. I asked a question, but you don't know if it's Shnei Me'eder, so don't do it. What's your question? If you're asking me, don't do it. But al pi halacha, there's only Marasayim when it's bedoimet to Basar Bechalav Shnei Me'eder. That's why Sif Gimel, which talks about Basar Behema Tmeya, says the Taz, there's no Marasayim. Basar Bechalav Isha, there is Marasayim. Basar Bechalav Shkedim, there is Marasayim. Because it's Shnei Me'eder. That's all the Taz says. That's how the Taz answers the question. But he says, don't do it anyways. I'm not going to be makel if the Ramah is machmer. The Ramah didn't get this chiluk. The Ramah said you're not allowed to cook basar behema tmeya b'cholof. Says the Taz, ein biyodi lahokil b'mashahech miramah. But he is masbir the mechaber. And the mechaber at Siv Gimel was not talking about Shneim Heter. He was talking about, one of them was Osir, Mashiach is Siv Dalad the Shneim Heter. But there is one case in Siv Gimel that was Shneim Heter. What's that? Go to Siv Gimel. There's one case there that's clearly Shneim Heter and clearly says it's mutter b'bishul v'ano. Oif b'cholov. So the Taz says, Enochanami. Enochanami. The Mechaber was chayzer from that. Oif b'cholov b'feida she can't cook. Mishum Arasayin. Because it's Shneim Heter. And l'cho'oire, I have a raya to the Taz. In Sif Hey, by the Beitzim, what does the Mechaber say? What's the Sif Hey? Huh?
I thought you saying that the Gimel was just talking about Smadin, which would basically mean...
That's not what he answers the Taz. He answers that since Gimel, the Shach tried to answer that. Where does he say that?
The whole thing before?
No, in the end, he says, the reason why the Ramah used the Lashon L'chatchila, because l'rfu you could always cook, there's no Marasayin. But that's not Pshat in the Mechaber. That's Pshat in the Ramah when he writes L'chatchila. The Mechaber holds you're allowed to cook it in Siv Gimel. Because it's not Shnei Meter. Siv Dalad is Shnei Meter. There's one case of it in Siv Gimel, which is Shnei Meter.
Later he changed his mind, but
Yeah.
then he erased what he wrote.
Right. Now Kasha, I'm not coming to answer everything. The Taz has a raya. Look at Sif Hey. What does it say in the end of Sif Hey? That if the egg is a very early stage, what does it say? Osir? Can't cook it with cholam. A minute ago in Sif Gimel you said you could. That's a clear raya that the Taz says. You see the Mechaber was chayzer. Now the Shach uses that as a raya that Lavashal means lechel. Shach proves from that. Why would the Mechaber write something that he already wrote in Gimel as mutter? Must be, it means lechel. According to the Taz, it makes a lot of sense. It's if Gimel Taka you are allowed to cook it. Once he introduced Marasayin, it's if Dal Taka you're not allowed to cook Basar Bechalav. And that's why even the egg you can't cook Bechalav. So the Taz comes out as actually very machmir in Marasayin, because even it applies even to Bishul. But it's only by its Marasayin of a Deraisa. When it's Marasayin of a Derabanon, there's no problem. He says if you have shkedim, put shkedim, but if you don't, ain't less achila. Okay. So now if we want to put this whole story in the picture, it comes as follows. The Ramah is always Marasayin. By a deraisa, bein bebishul, bein ba'achila, as long as it's marasayin of a deraisa. The Shach says there's always marasayin even by a derabonon, but only ba'achila, not bebishul. The Taz says there's taka always marasayin even by a derabonon. Sorry, only by a deraisa. Sorry, but even bebishul because he holds it doesn't make the chiluk of bishul and achila according to the Taz. Okay. Taz and Ramah, not the same thing. Well, lahalocha yes. Taz and Ramah the same thing. Yes. Mi'ikaredi he tries to answer, but yeah. Now, there's one problem. Agav, when the Taz says that if you don't have shkedim, it's mutter, he brought a raya. What was his raya? His raya was, one of the rayas was that the Ramah says, yesh lahaniach. How do you read yesh lahaniach? How do you translate yesh lahaniach? Huh? Yesh lahaniach, translate. You should put. How do you translate? You should. You have to put. You should put. Like if I ask one of my kids sometimes, can you, how do I say it? You want to maybe go get, well, you said maybe, I could say no. You know? I didn't say go do it. If you don't say go do it. So yes, the Taz says yesh laniach is sort of, it's a suggestion. That's what the Taz time is. It's a famous story when a kid wrote a letter to his father, chutzpah. What did it say in the letter? In Yiddish, Tate, gib geld. Tate, give me money. So his wife takes the letter, so you're not reading it right. You have to read it like this. Tate, gib geld. This all depends on the tone, right? So the Taz claims the tone of Yesh Lahaniach is what? Suggestion. So the Kiv Eger explodes. Hello, Yesh Lahaniach and the Ramah is talking about Behema or Oif? Behema. You're trying to rematir Oif. Obviously the Ramah didn't mean it as a suggestion. Because it says it by a Behema. And that's obviously impossible. By a Behema you certainly have to put Shkedim. That's the Kiv Eger's kasha. But because it is kasha, you see in the Pischei Tshuva, the end of Yud, he brings from somebody, the end, Ayin Taz, the Mashma Midvorov, the Gam Bebosar Behema Adin Kain. Even by Behema, if you don't have Shkedim, it's okay. The end of Pischei Tshuva Yud. It's on the list. How does he get to that? Because since the Taz brought a diuk from the Lashon Yesh Lahaniach, and he claimed Yesh Lahaniach as a suggestion, so obviously he's also talking about Behema. So you have here a machloikis from one spectrum to the other spectrum about Lechatchila and B'di'evet and Marasayin. How does this now play Bizman Hazeh? So for example, if you serve dessert, Ice cream, Shabbos Suda. Do you need to bring the actual container of the dessert where everyone sees it says, oh, you parv? Or not? Agav, this is a true story. I know this happened to somebody. Everyone was all excited how good the pot of ice cream tasted. You know why? Because it was milk. My mistake. It was milk. Anyways, do you have to? So, if based on everything we learned, what do you think? You say yes. Who's going to say no? I'm going to say no. Based on everything we learned. Huh? It's not bishul?
You're not cooking the ice cream.
Fakir, the shachos, there's no bad sign of bishul, but you're eating. It's worse. Oh, very good. Very good. You're not eating them together, Bechlau. The whole din over here about Marasai is when you eat them together. Let's say anywhere in Shulchan Aruch that within 6 hours, and you're eating something that looks like milk, that you have to put a big sign that it's fake.
Even if the egg, it says that
After that's not a shayla b'chlal. We're not eating it together with flesh. So there's no shayla b'dover that bisman hazeh, when you serve dessert, you don't have to put nothing. Because it doesn't say anywhere in Shulchan Aruch that when you're eating bezeh hazeh. But how about if it's part of the recipe? You're eating the fake cheese or a schmapper, what they used to call the tofu. What?
Does it matter if the meat's still on the table?
Maybe. But if you're not eating it together, there's no reason. This is a true story, by the way. I was sitting by Chasna, next to Rabbi Volshansky, Olav Hashalom, and they were giving out black coffee. So I asked the waiter, it was in a hall that wasn't kosher, but there was a mashgiach, and they made sure it's kosher. And I asked the mashgiach, I asked the waiter, can you get me some milk? What did I mean when I said milk? I meant, no, part of a creamer. Fine, he comes back with a bottle, not just milk, chol vacuum. He was about to pour it in my coffee. Rabbi Volshansky grabbed my hand. He says, don't drink it. It's chol vacuum. I ran to the mashgiach. Mashgiach started screaming at the goy. Nothing could come out of the kitchen without my permission. But just goes to show. Okay, because he got me real milk for my coffee. He's doing me a favor. Another story while we're on the subject. I was once in a restaurant. I'm not going to say where. That's officially a Chol of Yisrael restaurant. And I went to buy coffee. And the guy pulls out of the fridge a Chol of Stam milk. I'm like, what are you talking? This place is Chol of Yisrael. Yeah, but that's what we make. But the milk that we give for coffee doesn't have to be. I freaked out. I ran to the back. I wanted to make sure all the cheeses. And then I called it off. That I have a machshir. Called me back right away. I said, Mazois. Well, it's our policy that whatever's made there, but the oilam here is not so makbid. I said, hello, if you say Chol of Yisrael in a restaurant, there can't be anything that's not Chol of Yisrael in there. I said, it's a michshel mamish, and we're going to change the policy. I hope they did. Anyways, nachzin yaneinu. So number one, bisman hazeh, even if it's Shulchan Aruch, we don't have to make any changes today. You don't have to make any heker simply because it's not being eaten together. The achronim add that since bisman hazeh, chol of shkedem is not only used on purim to make v'napechu, and fake meat is made from tofu, and fake cheese is made from who knows what, tofu, yeah? So b'meila, bisman hazeh, you don't have to put a heker. You don't have to put a heker. Now you should tell people, yeah, if it's fake, if they're eating flesh, whatever, that's your business. But you don't have to because it's nofutz today, befeirush, it's nofutz today to make fake stuff, so it's okay. But in the achronim, in the days when they had to put a heker, there was a shaila. What if you don't have the actual thing that the milk is made of? You don't have shkedim, okay? You have rice. Can you put rice for rice milk from almond milk or almond rice milk? Could you put a sign? So, Lamashal, some say it has to be shkedim. That's why by Isha there's no Eitzah. Also, Lamashal b'chol of Isha. We don't put an Isha there? It's Satzara. You can. Some say you could put a heket of something else. Shkedim, whatever, to make it a heket. But the nicer, most opinions say today, you don't need that.
Even if you can you put a heket for fake milk if the meat is fake, not the milk?
Whatever. Same shayla. Agav, by the way, just as a side note, the Taz says that you're not going to aser oif to put the shkedim by oif b'di'evet. He says k'moy b'chol of isha. So where do you see by chol of isha that it's mutter? Stam maimer amuzge. The Pri Megadim says the Ramah says ava b'oif the Rabbanon ein lochos. So all the Mefarshim ask, the Ramah, I need a Ramah from Siv Dalet. The Ramah and Siv Gimel says it's mutter. Why do I need a Ramah by chol of isha if you have a Ramah by chol of shkedim? What are you talking about? You know, by if you don't have shkedim for oif, it's okay because the Ramah's matter by chol of isha with oif. Duh, he's matter by chol of shkedim with oif also. The feirush. What would the Taz mean? That's what the Bikivega didn't think that's what he meant. Okay, fine, done. Next sugya, beitzim. I'm going to say beitzim very bekitzer. I know some guys are still doing beitzim, and after that we're going to jump to sivov. Even if you didn't learn it yet, we're going to learn a few pieces together, and we'll learn pshat. Even if you didn't get there yet, but you should get there. Okay. So beitzim, eggs. Happened here by kaporis once. A woman was doing kaporis. and an egg plopped right on her. There are farmers that always tell me that the fact that you think that a chicken is a zocher or a nekeva is a baba ma'aser, you can't really know. There's no, you look at a chicken, yeah, I look at the crown, zocher and nekeva. That's what a farmer told me. But anyways, this one was taka and nekeva because the egg plopped out. Okay, you shechter the chicken and you find these eggs. Anyone, when you use your phones, you can walk afterwards and take a look, Google it, you'll see what the eggs look like. Mamish looks like a cluster of grapes connected to these vines, and they start to develop the yellow, and then it has these red veins on it, and then it starts to develop with the white, then it gets the krum lava and the membrane around it, and then it gets the klippa kosher. By the way, the Yad Yehuda, I forgot to mention who he was a big posek before the war. He writes, it seems from the Achronim here, and the Rishonim actually, that you could have an egg that already has chelboin and chelmoin, but it's still mu'udas begidim, it still has red veins. He says, Baba Mai says, I checked in all the farms, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Once it has the chelboin and the chelmoin, there's no mu'udas begidim. But Akitza, that's what he says. They say he checked, he opened it. He probably opened it. Okay.
Not the bird, not chickens.
No.
You said the membrane comes after them. How does the white liquid stay if there's no membrane?
It's not liquidy. It's a congealed white. It's interesting.
It's attached. It's
It's mamish congealed. It turns into liquid when the egg is finished. It's like a congealed thing. Yeah, mamish hazik. All right, because you're asking how does it hold without a shell? Pashut.
Without even the white.
Yeah. It's not liquidy. Akaponos. Let me bekitzer tell you how to learn this din here and how we get to the maskona here. If it says spam risk, mistama it's spam, right? But 347 is lav dafke spam. Hello. Very possible. It's too early. By when could I order? You deliver tomorrow, Stan? You're not going to deliver tomorrow. I have to pick up. Right. Okay. Could you call me back at the end of the week? Or after Rosh Hashanah? Yeah, call me at the end of the week after Rosh Hashanah. Thank you. Bye. See, Taka wasn't spam. I have a hunch. I schmeck the number. 732-973 is for sure spam. 347 is not. Okay, so there's a Mishnah that says, if you shech the chicken, or a oif, and you find beitzim gemuros, yeah? It's parav. You can eat it with cholov. Rabbi Yankiv says, if it's mu'udas begidim, it's fleshik. So there's two things we have to figure out over here. What does the word gemuros mean in the Tanakama? What does gemuros mean? And what does mu'udas begidim mean? So I'll answer the second one. What does mu'udas begidim mean? It's a machloikis. One pshat mu'udas begidim means is pashat still connected to the eshkil, to the cluster, whatever, to the vines, yeah? Another pshat is no, mu'udas begidim means if it just has red veins, that's also mu'udas begidim, and it's fleshik. First shit is a big makel. As long as it's detached, even if it looks red and it has red veins, suraiki are veins, sumki are red, yeah? It's going to be considered parav. But the second shit says, as long as it has suraiki, sumki, it's still mu'udas begidim. Fine. So now we know what Rabbi Yankiv means when he says mu'udas begidim. The Tanakama says gemuras. What's gemuras? If I asked you, what does gemuras mean? What do you think it means? A completed egg. What's a completed egg? With what? With a hard shell. It looks like it was about to be laid, right? This lady who did kaparas, it would have been shechted a minute later. They would find the beit gemura inside, correct? Anything below that is what? Fleshik. Rabbi Yankiv is mekel. Rabbi Yankiv says, no, I don't need gemuras. Just make sure it's not muras begidim. That's all he says. It doesn't have to be mamish gemuras. So according to this shitta, the Tanakam is the biggest machmir, correct? Okay. That's not what many Rishonim learn. For example, the Rashba says, no. Tanakam is mekel. Gemuras just means the chelboin and the chelmoin are complete. How do you know which is which? Chelboin comes from the word cholov, white. So the chelboin is the white. The chelmoin is the yolk. That's my way of figuring it out.
Huh?
Or lovon.
Yeah.
Fine, also. Probably that's the real reason, but I know it's the word cholov. Chelboin, you're saying it's lovon, emes. Now, so you have chelboin and you have chelmoin. I have a teacher that told me, how do you know what's a tamar and what's a te'eno? Which one is a fig, which one is a date? So he told me a cheesy thing, and I laughed at him. Then that's how I remember it. Tamar comes from the word tomorrow, and tomorrow is a date. So that's how you know tomorrow are dates. Some people look at them and they don't know what's a fig and what's a date. But that's besides the point. Okay, so the Rashba says as long as the chelboin and the chelmoin are gomor, that's parav. Even if it's muras begidim, which the Ad Yehuda says, I don't know what you're talking about. But even if it's muras begidim, Rabbi Yankiv is machmir, says it's true. That's called gomor, but if it's muras begidim, it's flesh. Okay. Then you have Rashi. Rashi says Gomor means what? Even just the Chelmoin, a full yoke, even if it's Mudas Begidim, it's also part of. And Rabbi Yankiv says, no, Taki Chelmoin is enough, but make sure it's not Mudas Begidim. Right, those are the three shittas. First shit is Tanakama is Klipa Kosher. Second shit is Gomor means the Rashba means Chelben v'Chelmoin and Rabbi Yankiv is Machmer. Rashi says Gomor means Chelmoin and Rabbi Yankiv is Machmer. Only according to the Tana, the first explanation, which is the Rashba and others, the Rashbam, sorry, that the Tanakama means Klipa Kosher, then Rabbi Yankiv is actually Mekel. Okay, so how do we paskin? So the Torah brings the shittas. So the Mechaber paskins like this. Pshat in Gomor means like who? The Rashba. What's the Rashba? What has to be finished? Chelboin and Chelmoin. And halacha ketanakama. Even if it's mudas begidim, it's part of. That's what the Mechaber says clearly. The Mechaber says, even if it's mudas begidim, it's part of. You can eat it with cheese, with milk. See, paskins, pshat like Gomor, like the Rashba, and the halacha ketanakama. All right. Comes the Shach Bariches and says, slow down. You made a big mistake. All to the Shedim hold like Rabbi Yankiv. I don't care what the pshat Gomor is for right now. But the halacha is like Rabbi Yankiv. Gomor, the mudas begidim is fleshik. Therefore, the Shach sets up, for the first time now, we're going to learn the din of Hefser Merubah. He tells you what to do Lechatchila, he tells you what happens in B'diavad, and he tells you what to do Hefser Merubah. Lechatchila, if you want to satisfy everybody, what are you going to pshat? What are you going to learn? Pshat in the Tanakama means, Gomor means what? Klipa kosher. So Lechatchila, unless it has a Klipa kosher, don't eat it with milk. We're starting up with the Rashbam, the Aguda, and the Mordechai. Well, why would you start up with those guys? They're great guys. And you have to eat it with cheese. Don't eat it with cheese. After that egg, yeah. If other eggs, go eat with cheese. That one don't eat with cheese.
Not connected also?
What?
At that stage, the almanac not connected?
Yeah, well, Gomer, Klipa kosher, it's ready to be laid. So B'meile, he says, Lechatchila, you open up a chicken, unless it's Klipa kosher, don't use it. B'di evet, you used it, you made a cheese omelet, what now? So I pass like that Ashba, Pshat and Gomer, that Chelben v'Chelmen, but Rabbi Yankiv, if it's Mudas Begidim, it's treif. I don't hold like the Mechaber. I hold like Rabbi Yankiv. Mechaber is wrong. He says, I don't know why the Ramah didn't argue. The Ramah just left it alone. He should have argued. Awesome.
Where's the Torah?
I don't know. It doesn't say. See, Pask is la halacha the Shach. Pshat is like the Rashba, b'di'evet, and halachic Rabbi Yankiv that if it's Mudas Begidim also. But Hefser Merubah, he says. Hefser Merubah, it's a big loss. You made a huge omelet for a whole bunch of guests, and you can't get out of it. There's no way. You got to feed them. Then halacha is like Rashi. What's Rashi say? Chelmoin, and then I'm going to be mekel that Me'udas Begidim means what? Connected. So as long as it's not connected, that's okay. That's also the Yankiv. Even if it had red veins, that's also okay. So Hefser Merubah. Now, by the way, what's pshat your mekel Hefser Merubah ever? The Mashal argued with the Ramah. You ever heard of Torah being okay? Hefser Merubah, you can eat treif. Hefser Merubah, you can eat chazer. What does that mean? So the Ramah answered, or his brother answered, I don't remember. He answered that pshat anytime I make a hefser merubah means that's the ikar halacha. It's just shaloi behefser we're being machmer. The ikar halacha is like Rashi, and the ikar halacha is the mudas begidim means mechubar ve'eshkel. Shaloi behefser. We don't want to start up with the other mefarshim. That's every time. That's why you'll find that Ramah. Sometimes you're makel behefser merubah, sometimes you're not. Why? Those places where the ikar halacha is like the shita that's machmer, we're talking about makel behefser merubah, and that's like what the Shach Paskins halacha in Sivkot Yud. The Taz says similarly that if it's Mudas Begidim, it's also even B'di'evet. He doesn't ask you, he doesn't mention Lechatchila and doesn't mention Hefser Merubah. But the Ikar Halacha of B'di'evet, if it's Mudas Begidim, they all argue with the Mechaber. Mudas Begidim is Beferish Flishik. Then they both bring the Minig Noshim. It's a Minig Noshim that even if it has a Klipa Kosher, it's also Flishik. That's the Minig Noshim. They seem to say that the Taz says it's only if there's a place, or the Shach says only if there's a place that has a Minig. If there's no Minig, you don't have to be Mekel. You don't have to be machmer sorry. Where does it come from? So the Darkei Moshe, or the Drisha brings, or the Darkei Moshe brings a very geschmacke source why the Noshim were machmer. Let's see if it's, I think it's a Darkei Moshe. Yeah. The Gemara says that you're not allowed to paskin in front of your Rebbe, even a simple halacha, like a beis bekutche, an egg with cheese, even a simple shayla like an egg with cheese, you can't paskin in front of your Rebbe. All the Mefarshim ask on the Gemara, what's the shaila about eating an egg with cheese? Why do I need a psak? Right? So the answer means an egg that was found in a chicken. So even if it's a poshut, what the din is, you don't paskin in front of your Rebbe. Because the Gemara chose that example, Rabbanim didn't paskin. Even if they were the Rebbe. When you came, they didn't want to paskin because the Gemara mentioned that case. So all the women came to the Rabbanim and they wouldn't paskin, so it became fleshik. That's what it became. They didn't want to pass that it's okay. From that became the minig, the shtrabev haminig, it says, the minig developed that eggs found in chickens are fleshing. And that's taka the minig today, by the way. And not that you would want to eat it or use it. But an egg found in a chicken is fleshing. Now, by the way, the shachantas both ask a stira by Evim and Achai when the chicken is alive and you kicked it and plopped out an egg. Over there, the Mechaber says it's Evim and Achai if it's Mudas Begidim. So why is it not fleshing here? Shachantas both ask the stira. And they both answer that Evim and Achai and fleshik are two separate dinim. You could have something that's Evim and Achai, but not fleshik. The biggest raya the Shach brings is milk. Milk. That's why it's also there, because it could be Evim and Achai, but here the chicken is shechted, so it's not fleshik, so it's not a stira. She's calling me back. Hello. Ken? כן, אני לא יכול לדבר עכשיו באמצע שיעור, פשוט חשבתי שמישהו אחר. טוב, called it by. Fine, בסדר. Okay, where are we holding? Now we're going to skip to Sivlov. We're going to move on to Sivlov. Okay. So the Mechaber brings a whole bunch of stuff that's Basar Bechalav and not Basar Bechalav, and then we're going to do the Ramah. Cholav Zochor. The Mechaber says Cholav Zochor is also with Rabbanon, to cook with meat or to eat. The Ramah says Cholav Zochor le mikri Cholav Klal. The Shach says there's not a machloikis. The Mechaber was talking about Zochor of a behemoth, and the Ramah is talking about Cholav Zochor of a human. It's only Marasayin. It's like Cholav Isha, right? So b'meilim nofal a techdeda einay oisa, but Cholav Zochor of a behemoth is mamish also Basar Bechalav b'derabbanan. Behemoth Zochor.
Who says that?
The Shach. Agav, the Shach brings a raya from Rashi, yeah, that it was talking about a behemoth. Look in the middle of the Shach, on the first column, Tesvav. He brings Rashi towards the end of the thin lines. Okay, the Pirish Rashi b'Shas Shom b'Zel Shayna. You have it all? Towards the end of the first column. V'loi b'Cholav Zochor, meaning shehoyu le'Cholav mu'et min hadadim kegoyin im nishtane v'hoyu le'dadim. And that's a raya that he's talking about a behemoth. Anyone can tell me what that raya is? How do you see from Rashi that it's a behemoth? Huh? Come on, Tzvi. A Zochar Adam has dadim. You don't need to have nishtana v'yesh le dadim. A behemoth Zochar doesn't have dadim. So if Rashi says nishtana v'hoyu le dadim, but the Chasimin is talking about a behemoth. Because a Zochar of a human has dadim also. So mainly you see from Rashi talking about a behemoth. Okay, next. Says the Ramah, Yesh Oimrim, skip to Yesh Oimrim, you have it? Also, Lechatis, Ha'eish, Tachas, Gedeira Shal Goy. The fish heim mevashlim bohem pomim cholav pomim basar. V'hamechate tachas Gedeira Shalohem, bo lidei bishul basar v'cholav. You're not allowed to stoke a fire of a goy cooking on a pot. Because the goy cooks basar and the goy cooks cholav. So when you're going to be stoking, what are you doing? What aveda are you being over on? Bishul basar v'cholav, with svashal gediba chalev. So don't do that, okay? Which we spoke from the reason why you can't go to culinary school, because the recipes have basar b'cholav. It says the Shach, what are you cooking now? The guy is cooking basar or cholav or water. What's she cooking? So the Shach says, learn Yud Ches with me. Ubemordchai shom kosav she'osel levashel basar bebeis Yisrael l'kedei shal goy shema yechata Yisrael l'chein tzorech l'shifchis goyes shtei kedeiros achas shal basar achas shal cholav. Make sure the shiksas have two pots, because if the shiksa has one pot, you're going to come by mistake and mix and stoke the pot. So I connect this always, by the way, always, to the din in Siman Kuf Yud Gimel. It says that if your shiksa in your house cooked food, it's not bishul akum. It says that why? Because when you walk into the house, naturally, what do? First thing, open the pot, see what there is. You make a stoke of the fire. So mistama, it's not bishul akum because Ayid helped, right? According to Ashkenazim, that's enough for bishul Yisrael, right? So, if that's the case, make sure your shiksas also have two pots, because you're naturally going to walk in and macha mix. You're going to be over a bishul basar v'cholav. Yeah. Says the Shach continues. Geen posak, v'teres chatos. Miu, basar lav dafke. Elohu adin, shar dvorim. Doesn't matter what they're cooking. Even if they're cooking water, they cooked this morning or yesterday or the day before basar b'cholav. Now you're cooking the tam in the walls of the pot is basar b'cholav, but the tam in the water is basar b'cholav. So it doesn't matter what the guy is cooking. The guy could be cooking vegetables. Shar dvorim also. The zil basar taima, that's the reason why it's also, because the guy cooks many times basar b'cholav, correct?
Just a tichu every day, huh?
What?
Or if you just wash them up every day.
Why do what every day?
Washing them up every day wouldn't help.
Washing it? Kashing it, you mean?
Yeah, kashing.
Yeah, who kashes a pot? You have to make sure it boils and spills over. Miu ein bozeh elo chumra ba'alma. It's only a chumra. The ein ha'olam is hard in bozeh. People are not careful about this thing that I just said. All right, so how do you learn pshat? What's a chumra ba'alma? Two options. One option is to make your shiksa have two pots, but you're not allowed to mix it even if they're cooking water. Or even cooking water is only a chumra ba'alma, and you could mix the pot. There's two ways to learn the shach. So the Gilya Mashal says, Yud Dalet, it's on the list. Ein shach sefkot Yud Ches, the afilu shar dover osu levashel. Right away there's a problem. What's wrong with cooking shar dvorim? Let's say the shiksa is cooking now water. You're not allowed. What do you mean? Ein bishul achar bishul. The basar bechalav that the shiksa made was already cooked. Now she's recooking the basar bechalav. Don't we know a klal ein bishul achar bishul? We discussed it in the previous year. Says the Gilya Mashov yeshraya l'choyre mikan. The basar bechalav shekvar nizbashal yachad. Also levash leishainis. Ayin Gilyan the Reish Sif Aleph. Look what I wrote in the beginning of the Siman that the Pri Megadim says you're allowed to. It's just if you cook the basar and the chalav individually and then you cook it together, that's asr. But if they were already cooked together, you're allowed to. You see the shach argues, says the Gilya Mashal. Absolutely not allowed.
Why can't you tell that's from around here?
What?
Why can't you tell attack it was cooked separately and then it's kind of went?
It's one pot, no?
Yeah, but it seems to be cooked separately on the one pot.
So let's say
No, if you cook, no, that's together.
when they cook the flesh.
Okay.
Zok, very good.
Okay, but then
If it's the same pot, it's not separately.
okay, but maybe that's something else was cooked on a different pot and cooked together.
It doesn't matter as long as you have already the chalav in the walls of the pot. Now you're cooking basar. That's already everything cooked together. For the Pri Megadim, you didn't see it. You should. Akaponim. So the Gilya Mashal says, from here is a raya that ain't bishul, that yesh bishul achar bishul. You can't cook basar b'chalav twice. Obviously, how did he learn the shach when he says miu ein bazeh elo chumra ba'alma? What's it going on? No. Then what's the raya? Adarabah, you're allowed. I would bring a raya from the shach that ein bishul achar bishul. He says you're allowed to stoke the fire. Obviously, the Gilya Mashal learned pshat in ein bazeh elo chumra ba'alma that it's going back on the fact that you have to make your shiksa have two pots. That's a chumra ba'alma, and even in South Africa, they don't make the shiksa have two. Everyone has how many shiksas do you have? 3, right? 4 of them, yeah? 2 of them do basar, 2 do chalav, yeah? You don't make sure they don't mix, yeah? No, that's a chumra ba'alma to make the shiksas have 2 pots. But, you're not allowed to stoke when they're cooking water is also 100%. As they zok the Gilya Mashal, okay? However, the Pri Megadim learns, no. You're taka allowed to stoke even the water. The pashtus, what's the reason? Because ein bishul achar bishul. Let's see Sif Sedas Yud Ches. Ayin shach. The ein ha'olam nizharim bazeh. The ein bazeh l'chumra ba'alma. Okay. Ayin kreisi u'plesi yoyis Yud Gimel. Look at the kreisi u'plesi. Sif Sedas Yud Ches. Look at the kreisi u'plesi. If you look there, the kreisi u'plesi goes to a whole arichis about this shach, and he says, it sounds like the shach is saying ein bishul achar bishul, not like the Gilya Mashal, and that's why it's only a chumra. There's no chumra, and you don't have to do it. It's chumra ba'alma. You're allowed to do it. But uledina, he concludes, basar bechalav yesh bishul achar bishul. The kreisi u'plesi says, unlike what the Pri Megadim shita is, yesh bishul, and you could still stoke the fire, mix the pot, even if yesh bishul achar bishul. Why? Because mikol mokim habalua shebetoicha kadera mi basar bechalav yachad sheyifloit lachutz v'yizbashul loichoshu dezel loihavet derech bishul. The kreisi u'plesi is mechadash, another chiddush. He says cooking bliois is not derech bishul. That's not called cooking basar b'chalav, even if you hold yesh bishul achar bishul. That's why ein ha'olam nizharim bazeh and ein bazeh l'chumra ba'alma. So far, so good. Why are you allowed to stoke the pot when there's water being cooked? Says the kreisi u'plesi. Even if I hold yesh bishul achar bishul, which means you're not allowed to cook basar b'chalav a second time, the actual basar b'chalav, but the bliois in a pot that's clean that you cooked this morning basar b'chalav, that you're allowed because it's not derech bishul. Okay.
Is the after you be cooking the blias or the blias in the pot?
The blias in the pot. The blias are always in a pot. There's no such thing as blias otherwise.
Oh, yeah, because the Kiva in the beginning of this Siman.
Says what? Says what?
Said that the reason you're not allowed to cook is because when you re-cook up the blias.
Right, blias, that's not blias. That's not the blias we're talking about. When we say blias here, it's blias in a pot. Okay, now, it doesn't use the word blias there anyway. I don't think so. Does he?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he doesn't.
Shenivlu.
Shenivlu. That's not
Nivla
blias.
b'yacholo.
That's correct. That's not blias. That's a fact. Okay, nachzor li'inyoneinu. Which biur is emes? Ein bishul achar bishul or not derech bishul? And I have a better question for you. If we hold ein bishul achar bishul, what do we need the kreisi u'plesi for? If we hold enechanam ein bishul achar bishul, anyways, allowed to cook basar b'chalav twice. Do I need the kreisi u'plesi to tell me that it's not derech bishul? And if yes, for which case?
Because if you do cook something that's in vegetables in pot that's used for basar b'chalav and not kosher, now you know you're not even less special.
Yeah, say that because of ein bishul achar bishul. I don't need the kreisi u'plesi for that. My question is, why don't you need the crazy place his word? I get it. That's what we're talking about. You're cooking para. What? Very good. Very good. What if you were meleach basar bechalav in a pot, and then you clean the pot out? If you're only going to be matter because ein bishul achar bishul, now you can't because he's in the head. His head is in the b'kiveger, so he remembers. So he's tiny according to the b'kiveger. Once you did salting first, now you're going to cook it. You're going to be over on bishul. But if you all like the crazy place, you still could because it's not derech bishul. Cooking bliss is not derech bishul, so it's going to be mutter. Understood? Now, the Rebbe Kiva Eger here on number Yudalad, which says in the notes that it's mumlets, you don't have to learn it. He comes with a whole other beer because stam keli ein a ben yoimai. Probably the shiksa cooked it yesterday, a day ago, and but the evidence not basar b'cholav, so maybe you're allowed to cook it. He also brings ein a miskavin, another svara. You familiar with the machlokes of the Alter Rebbe and the Taz about Sofik psikresha? Okay, the next year, you remind me, I'll talk about it for a few minutes because I want to learn another shtickle Ramah. Okay?
One second, is this if speaking about when you're using the same stove?
It's the same pot, yeah.
No, meaning you're using the same stove to light up.
Who cares about the stove now?
I'm saying because if the guy has another stove.
You're getting involved in a whole other shayla. Could you use the same stove for basar and cholov? For treif and kosher? Same oven.
I'm saying why turn on the fire if the guy has their own pot, their own stove, whatever.
Because why are you doing it? I don't know.
The same
I don't know, because you're using the fireplace. Because she's using the fireplace. You want to warm your house. I don't know. Also using the same stove, but you're getting involved in a whole other shayla. You're allowed to let the shiksa use your same stove. Can you have the shiksa cook on your stove? Well, of course, don't let her, but can you? Okay, let's learn the next piece quickly of the Ramah. Oit kosu, the ein la'arev mayim shidichu b'em kli basar, im mayim shidichu b'em kli cholav, v'litin l'fnei behema, ta'asurim b'hano. The dirty water from basar and from cholav, yeah, don't mix them together and give it to your behema. Why? Because it's also b'hano, it's basar b'cholav. So obviously the Shach says it's only if they were very hot when you mix them, then it's derech bishul. If it's not hot when you mix them, it's not derech bishul. All the Mefarshim freak out. Why could you even mix them and throw it in the garbage? You're even on bishul basar b'cholav. Forget about it. Let's say you don't want to give it to your behemoth. So what do you want to do?
No.
Because it's also bishul.
Even without bishul, it's going to
What do you mean? For the garbage, it's no problem. You let it mix basar b'cholav if it's not derech bishul and you're throwing it out. You're not having a no. What's the problem?
for the animal.
What? So don't give it to your animal. Ask him. Don't do that. But you can mix them. Sounds like you could mix them and throw them in the garbage. Right? How do you do that? So the B'kivege Tesvav gives a teretz. You learn it. It says it. I'm just going to tell you another teretz from one of the Achronim that you read the Ramah differently. You have to read the Ramah like this. Oit kosvu. The ein la'arev ma'im shidichu b'em kli basari ma'im shidichu b'em kli cholov. Kama. Don't do that. And number two, v'litin l'fnei behema. And if you did it, don't give it to your behema because also no. Taka that Ramah's telling you, don't do it. Everyone else learns pshat that I'm also telling you don't mix it and give it to the behema because it's also about no. What about bishul? So you have to use the b'kivege. We'll talk about it in the next year if we have time about bittul b'shishim, whatever. It's a whole story he has there, yeah. But right, but otherwise, taka not allowed. But why would the Ramah not say it? So some of us say that's what he says. Ein litein, number one, don't mix it. And ein la'arev, and number two, don't give it to your behema. Okay, we'll stop here. Tomorrow we have to finish. Tomorrow, the next day, tomorrow's Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to give a shiur on the end of the Siman, the rest of the Siman. We're going to be mashlim this and the story with the what's it called? With the cheese.